Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wareham Finance Committee. Today is Wednesday, October 5th at 6:30 PM. May I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Dominic Camerano, Gerald Stefanski, Julie Moran, Norma Skohoten, and Bernie Pigeon and myself.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Hello, Jonathan.
Yeah.
And the first item on our agenda is discussion regarding the Fall Town Meeting articles of 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, which are the Wareham Pollution Control Facility funding borrowing requests. And Mr. Gilberti, who is the chairman of the Sewer Commissioners, and Mr. Campino, who is the director of our lovely facility that we have. We'll start with Article 15, Jim, if you may.
That's the clarifier.
Engineering costs for project clarifier.
Yeah, for $2 million.
Those, all three of those items, the first three, for $2 million apiece, those are all for engineering, for each,
Engineering studies?
engineering studies for each of those projects. One for Swiss Beach, one for the clarifiers, one for the headworks.
What are the clarifiers, please?
Excuse me?
What are the clarifiers?
They're the things that
Can you clarify that for us?
That clarifies the stuff that comes into it.
And to what level are you trying to achieve?
Oof, good question, Mr. Chairman.
Transparency or what?
Transparency, we have a limit of suspended solids. And so when we make a lot of suspended solids through the aeration system, the degradation of the organic matter, so we have all this mass, if you will, the sludge, activated sludge. And so we put it into a clarifier, which literally, it's sedimentary, let it settle, the heavy settle to the bottom. And then anything that's light, like scums and soaps and greases, et cetera, goes to the top. And then in the middle, you have a clarification. It's water. It's TSS less than so many parts per million to meet the permit guidelines. And then that spills over wares and goes on to the next process. There's secondary clarifiers. They do make primary clarifiers, which we don't have any of. And that takes all the raw that comes in and does pretty much the same thing, but the clarity of the water is not as great, and it has plenty of suspended solids in the primary. So we have secondary, so it's a little different.
I have a question for
Yes, go ahead, Dom.
you. Were there any RFPs sent out for the engineering? I mean, $2 million for engineering. Not a small sum.
So what we
Why
do,
would engineering be of such great cost where we need money for, my opinion, equipment or more important things? Engineering, 2 million, 3 times, that's $6 million just for engineering.
Well, our guesstimate, on that is that the project, the three projects together is gonna be a total of
I'm sorry, I don't hear that well.
I'm sorry. The guesstimate number of 60 million for the three projects.
Right.
Of that, we've used the figure of 10% of the total project cost for engineering costs and
Well, there-
divided it by 3.
Okay, and that number
And
works,
those
I
are-
can see where that
and-
number is, but were there
and
any
those-
RFPs
and
sent
those-
out for
Those,
that, or just
Tho-
your guesstimate cost?
that's the guesstimate at the moment, it's a not to exceed number also.
And is that based on GHD having done some initial analysis, to your point, to give you the 2 million, is that GHD telling you that, in their opinion, that's about what it's gonna cost, or?
Yes.
it's an estimate.
Excuse me, that 10% figure is used in the industry?
Industry standard.
It's an industry standard.
Some as high as 25%, but it's industry standard. And you need to design or you can't move forward. The DEP will not accept anything without a design. And so we're asking for design money to move forward
And
if
I
we're
get
approved.
that, and I understand all that, just,
And it's procured, to your point, RFPs, we do 7 engineering firms, we do that every 3 years. However, engineering is exempt from procurement, just so you know. You don't have to procure. We do it as good practice, but it's not violating the Inspector General's rules and regulations for procurement. So we try to use engineers that have extensive knowledge in what you're doing, and we have 7 that we work with. And every 3 to 4 years, we haven't done it in the last 3 to 4 years, we go out again and ask for qualifications. So we try to qualify by the qualities of the engineering firms and what the diversity is within an engineering firm and what they can offer. And then we get a list of engineers, and then we just pick and choose as we do projects that may be more suited for specific engineers. So that's the general ballgame and how it's
Well,
handled.
then, basically what you're saying is you feel comfortable that a $2 million engineering on that project is reality. How's that?
Absolutely, I feel real comfortable. As industry standard, I feel real comfortable, not only with the cost, but with the knowledge level and the desire to work on the behalf of Wareham. I'm more than comfortable.
Okay. This seems like a large number for engineering.
Oh, they are. Oh,
That's all.
trust me.
You wanna go back to engineering school?
Tom, you can pay me $2 million, I'll stand on my head anyway, I'll tell you anything you wanna know, pal.
So effectively, this is providing you with an engineering study
Design plan, different. So
to qualify you for the overall 60 million that the entire
No.
project.
let me clarify. We're not going to know if we've been awarded the funds until January. What we're doing is we're putting in place the engineering, because when you get the nod, you get the list, and you're on the list in January, then you're off and running to design. So what we're doing is we're procuring money for the design engineers, so if we're accepted, one part of the project, all the project, or whatever, then we're gonna run and have the engineering done, because we have to be ready by spring to present all this and also get, a commitment to the funding and get things to the DEP, because come the following October, it's gotta be done. And we're asking the engineers to design something rapidly. It just doesn't happen. You gotta give time. So we're trying to get ahead of the game. If the DEP decides that no project in Wareham was worthy, then this is all moot. If they decide that our projects are worthy and they're gonna award it, then this becomes critical. So that's what we're doing.
And you have to be prepared to accomplish it
Absolutely,
under the circumstances.
absolutely, absolutely. So nothing is committed until they commit to us, and that's not happened yet. And that won't happen until January. They're in the middle of the meeting. This is statewide, and there's plants and facilities throughout the entire state fighting for a pool of money, whatever that number is. And we're all fighting for that same pool. So they take all these projects and they weigh them out. And I'm sure there's politics in it too, like everything else, but basically there's a weighted system, and they weigh it all out, and it's okay. And the projects that have more significance to meet the goals of nitrogen removal, because there's very specific guidelines, those projects rise to the top. They're selected, the top 100, and they're awarded. Now, if one of the top 100 drops off, then 101 becomes significant. And so that's the game. So you get a long list, and you're given a position, and then they say they're gonna fund 100, and then from there, what happens, happens.
So you're asking town meeting to appropriate $2 million on the condition that should you become eligible, you're prepared to go forward.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Say, Guy, is this for a new clarifier, or?
Yes.
And what is the condition of the present clarifier?
Well, we're taking it down now, one of them, because the arm fell off, and it's been off all summer. It's caused a lot of harm. It caused a lot of odors. We couldn't even clarify. We had problems with our UVs. We had problem with our bacteria permit to the river. So they're critical components. And what we have is vintage 1972. And one was built in 1999 design, online in 2005 with 1997 specs, because it was cost effective. So they're junk. They can't even meet. We've had a report in 2012 put out by, I think it was Woodward and Curran, that the clarifiers in 2012 were insufficient to do the job they're required to do in a 205 design online. So we've struggled for quite some time with them. And anytime we get a surge, like say a storm, and the water comes in, and we get what we call peak flow, the square footage design of that clarifier cannot handle, so there's short circuiting, and the solids go over, back up the filters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're junk. They're totally junk. So we have to build them bigger, and they're 10-footers, which is obsolete. Now they have to be minimum 14 feet to handle the sludge. They have to have baffles now. So the criteria for them now is far greater than what we have. So we have to move forward.
How long a project would that be if approved by the state or funds by the state?
It's a good question. If the state approves us in January, then we have to get a commitment from the town meeting in spring to fund it. We have to have the design to the DEP between October and November of next year, and then we go to contract. That's usually awarded the following spring, so we won't start till the spring of 2024 fiscal year, and then it's about an 18-month to 2-year project, depending on availability. Right now, projects are spread out because we can't get components, and we're hoping by the time we get there that the supply chain eases up and we're able to get components. So, and then we're figuring by 2026 will be completed. At that point, we'll fund it as far as the loan goes. In the interim, we'll have to pay the engineer and get reimbursed to the state, and then when it's all said and done, then you just do whatever you really borrowed and been reimbursed, then you put it into a loan process.
So what you have now has gotta go for 4 years?
I don't even want to talk about it. I have the same thing with many, many components. We still have to make them limp along. And it's a chore. It's a major chore. Right now, we have a welder coming in next Tuesday to weld things just to get us by. So at least it'll stay up top of the water and not fall off. And while we're there, we're going to look at the bottom, what they call flights, the rubber scrapers. We're going to put new rubber scrapers. So we're spending money on antiquated products because we can't get it replaced any sooner. We're also doing the same thing with our aeration basins. We're rebuilding our aeration basins knowing that they're inadequate, that we have to replace them. But I have no option because A, the supply chain is a challenge, and we have to spend this money to maintain a permit. There's no option. We can go in circles all we want and talk about bad money after good money, but we don't have an option because we're obligated to meet our permit to the river, which was tough in this summer. So, yeah, it's crazy.
So
Yeah,
if
you're
this-
right.
If this goes to craps, you have to shut down?
Have to shut down and fix it. So what happens,
Can you fix it?
yeah, we do. We have to do whatever we can. You get welders in, you get design, and they just put it together. Because it's all metal, concrete, and those type of things. And so you weld. It's not structurally sound, but we're trying to get a few years out of it, and that's what we'll do until we can get it replaced. It's as simple as that, because I can't say I don't need it. The biggest concern of wastewater always has been is redundancy. Redundancy is costly, and it's hard to get politicians to pay for redundancy. Because when you say I'm going to build a tank that I'm not going to use unless it's an emergency, or when I take this one offline for service, they say, well, how much is that? You don't really need that, you see, because you can get by without it because it's a cost. And we always try to minimize the cost because it's debt, right? So we all say, how little can you spend? If we had redundancy at this plant, then I wouldn't care because I could take something offline, take my ever-loving time, repair this, and, and get good welders in there and get it almost, I wouldn't say 100%, but pretty good. But now I have a small window because my permit goes from April to October. I have from November 1st to March 31st to do any repairs because I can't afford to take any pieces offline because I don't have redundancy. So I have to rely on weather conditions, parts, and everything in the small window to get it done. And if I don't meet it, I put it back online and hope to heck we can do it next year. So those are the constraints that we're under, and money is and I get it. I mean, if you don't have money, you don't have money, and you do what you got to do. But that's the reality of wastewater. And at one time it was 33% greater. Those numbers are gone because it's a cost factor. And if it's 42 million and I can get it for 22 to meet the budget within the community, that's what happens. So that's just the nature of the beast. So yes, your question, yes, we have to limp along until I can replace it. And we'll do our very best to keep going because we have no option.
And I think GHD did a good job of prioritizing what phase one, this is what we need, phase two, and then the issue is where we need the rest of the money, but I think we'll cross that bridge.
We're going to cross a lot of bridges because there's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And everything's life expectancy, right? And we know a life expectancy.
A lot of it is
everything.
absolutely high
So,
risk at this
yeah.
point.
So when it gets there, then it's okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
Is it working? Well, yeah, it's running, but it's at its life end. I remember Dad used to tell me, if you're fortunate to get 80 summers. At his 80th summer, he said every summer after this is a blessing.
Yeah.
And he lived to 91. But he knew that he was only going to get 80 as a rule. And so we know that a certain piece of equipment is going to last this long as a rule. We may get a few more years and we count our blessings when we get them. But at the end of its life expectancy, we better make plans to replace it or replace it because the dependability of that piece of equipment is critical. And if we lose it, the consequences are great. So that's what we try to apply, and GHD did a good
You
job.
have right now, which is,
Oh, yeah.
you can't afford to have anything go offline, it seems.
Oh, my goodness, I can't afford to have anything
Yeah.
offline, and when it goes,
GHD will be down our throats.
So we had to have an asset list of all of your assets, motors, everything else, when we bought them, what their life expectancy is, what it's gonna cost to replace them, when that's all gonna happen, and lay it out there, so we know.
Tom, we did that back in 2014, we call it capital improvement plan. We laid, it was
And it
thick.
got-
It
yeah.
laid everything out. And that plan said $100 million over 15 years. So we've done that. The question becomes is, do you accept that as reality, or is that just what you'd like to see? And when we did that, the engineers took plenty of time, and the operators, and these were real hard numbers, going back to
I
the
remember it.
manufacturer.
I remember it.
It was incredible. And we said, this is our plan. And this is just to stay even. This isn't to get ahead and that was a real honest to God plan. And you're gonna see, we're gonna spend that money. We delayed it,
So
but it's real.
You look at, are we gonna have a sewage treatment plant or not gonna have a sewage treatment plant? That's
the question.
cost of the game.
Yeah.
And we have to make a
We gotta
decision.
do it.
We gotta make a decision.
But it's not a decision, we've made the
I
decision.
get it, we have
to
it,
a
we
s-
own it.
That's it. We either run it or we shut it down.
No.
The thing is, that I think what we also have to look at is that we need to run it, we need to improve it wherever we can. Because if we don't, at some point in time,
Somebody's gonna tell us.
somebody's gonna tell us how and what and where and why, and it's
Another
gonna cost us
consent order
twice
from the
whatever it's gonna
DEP.
cost us
This
now.
is scary.
Consent order from the DEP.
As soon as that happens, the numbers are gonna skyrocket.
Yeah.
Bad enough now, but
Sorry.
No, listen, I always said that sewer plant's the backbone of the town, I understand that.
Any other questions on this particular article?
Three articles, right? 15, 16, 17, you just,
right,
you're
And now
all the
the-
same, right?
Yep.
exactly. the
Article
rest.
17 is the engineering project for Swift's Beach Smith Street lines. What are you doing with Swift's Beach now?
We're trying to get everybody upset.
We're doing a good job.
Well, I know
of
you were
it.
effective at that. I was,
Doing a good job of it.
We
We're
wanna
pretty proud of
continue
it.
on. No, this is,
Oh, that's the other
We
side.
have to, same thing with Switz Beach. We have asbestos pipes that are end of their life expectancy. They're floating, there's no integrity, there's a compromise of the structural. And so there's leakage, there's I&I, there's inflows, a lot of things are happening. So we try to make a decision, what is a long term? There's a lot of solutions out there. Some, I'd be very blunt, I'm not gonna say anyhow, but some are very, very inexpensive. But they're short-term Band-Aids. We'll have to do those many, many times. Or do we do a long-term fix? And that's where we are. What's the best for the buck for the long term? You know, if I'm selfish and say, well, at my age, I'm not gonna see a benefit, so I want the short-term cheap, because I'm not gonna benefit. If I'm younger, I'm saying, no, I want the big benefit. Or I say, well, I may not benefit it because I have age, but my grandchildren will. So there's many ways to look at many ways in what we spend. So we're gonna lay everything out there. But what we did is we applied to the DEP for a project, for that article, and we're saying, we're gonna do hard piping. We're gonna bring everything up to a low level, 4 feet. Everything's gonna be hard, from the house to the line, because everything's in water. And that's the dilemma. Everything's in water because the water table's at 4 feet. Pipes are down 8 feet, 6 feet, 17 feet, 14 feet, 12 feet in the water table. So they're totally surrounded by water. And bedding of pipes in water is a challenge at the very least. So we have pipes moving, and their couplings, the old asbestos pipes had couplings, and they separate quite easily. And so that's the issue. That's the problem. And what are we gonna do about it? And you couple that with the rise in sea level, the storm surges, there's a plethora of issues. So what do we do? So we're beginning that process, trying to make things tight to minimize or even eliminate infiltration, which is water coming from we call groundwater, and inflow, which is from roof leaders, sump pumps, manhole covers, any other source other than infiltration. How do we address it on the long term? And that's what we're trying to do. And in this process, eliminate 2 deep pump stations that are down about 30 feet, and they're starting to see wear and tear from with groundwater around them, and the interiors, because they've been there since 1978, and they're in serious trouble, especially Ruggles, because it was flooded by Bob. And so everything's rusted. Even the stairwell going down to it is totally rusted, so it needs a total rehab. So is doing this project and eliminate those, is that the best cost-effective way to go? And if we don't, if we say we want to line the pipes, we can do that. We really can, but that means I gotta rebuild 2 pump stations at a tremendous cost. So it's all, what's the best solution long-term. So we feel that right now that this is the best solution, and if something comes up better, we'll definitely look into it, but we're asking the federal government through the state SRFM program to give us a 0% loan because we're doing it for nitrogen. What we're saying, leaky pipes compromise the integrity of the estuary. We believe that if there's infiltration, there's exfiltration. If water can come in, it can go out. It's just I believe, physics because pressure can pull water. And there's case studies. Woods Hole did a great case study on exfiltration. So if we don't fix leaky pipes, then we're jeopardizing our shellfish beds, our estuaries where where life begins. And so what do we want to do? Does it matter to us? Does it not matter to us? So we have to make some serious decisions on the long term that's beneficial for a town that's solely dependent upon the water for our revenue in the summer. People come here for what? Certainly not for some of the stores. It may not be for some of the restaurants, but it's definitely for the water recreation, for the boating, and for the shellfishing, and all the things that go along with the water. So we have a serious commitment to make to what we have for our, if you will, a great asset for the town of Wareham. So what this project is all about, long-term solution for a problem that is very serious.
What is hard pipe that you refer
It's
to?
force mains. It's pipe that's extruded, no joints, and it's long, and you cut it. It's in reels, and you cut it as you go.
Was it
So you
made
have
of
no
metal?
joints. It's made out of plastic.
Okay.
PDE, DPM. There's all kinds of acronyms, but plastic. I don't know if it's one of those everlasting chemicals, but it's plastic. But anyways, so now there's no potential, even up to the pumps and into the home. So now you're taking all the potential of groundwater coming into laterals into the mains away. You're just taking them away. And that's critical because, again, we're trying to protect a very, very critical asset, which is our waterways. So that's the goal. That's the long-term goal.
And it also increases your capacity, right? Because you're gonna be handling
Yeah,
less product.
absolutely, because anytime we get infiltration, we get capacity compromised by the pipe itself, by pushing water through, and the plant, because we're getting a lot of excess stormwater that we shouldn't be getting. So yes, absolutely, that's a valid point.
Nora?
And just to clarify, this is another $2 million for an
Engineering
for the
to design, yes, ma'am.
And expected to be a $20 million project.
That's right. If we get, because we're on, and that's why they're separate, and so it gives the DEP the option, I'll take this one, not this one. If we put them all together, it's win or lose. And so we gave them, we have 3 shots at funding, and 1 of them, 2 of them, 3 of them should get funded, we don't know, but we're hoping. We'd like to see all, but whatever it is, it is.
Any other questions? Okay, well, a guy has got himself in trouble with the Restaurant Association.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to insult anybody. I watched a skit about a gentleman from England, and he had to apologize for a week at a time because every time he said something, he insulted somebody. So yeah, here I am blindly leading the blind. Oh, I have to apologize to the blind. And it's just, we talk every day and we say things with no intent to insult anybody, but in today's day and age, I'm insulted. So if
I'm sure you missed a few people anyway. when that
Yes,
did.
I'm sure I did. So I didn't intend to insult anybody. And I don't know it's because I eat at the restaurants and they're all great. I eat at the restaurants. So I don't want to insult anybody, but my point was the waterways. That's our significance, the waters.
We'll stop right there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Article 18.
You skipped 16.
16, did I?
unless I
Well,
missed-
Well, he said all 3 of those.
He said all three.
Saying
So
2
16
million,
is
so
just
it's not a
another
big
2
deal.
million.
Right, it's just
Just
another
another
2 million for
Another
the
2
headworks.
million for engineering.
What are the other?
So it's for
What is the
headworks.
headworks?
What are the headworks?
Yeah.
The headworks is the beginning of the facility. This is where all the screenings take place. We get rid of all the non-flushables, which is a major problem. It gets rid of the grits or the inorganic matter, sand, things that we can't process in the plant. It removes everything. And then the rest of the product goes into the plant to be treated. And without that major component, then you're jeopardizing and challenging all the operations behind it, which we are. We have rags throughout the system that's causing us nothing but issues. So that, what we're gonna do is the building will probably stay, right? 'Cause it's got a footprint. Within the building, everything's corroded and not working. So we'll go and we'll have to figure out a new system to remove air and probably increase the air exchange and then replace the components within that building. And the fire alarm, the wiring, the lighting, everything is corroded. So it has to be replaced.
Any other questions? No? Okay, we can move on then. Which one did I miss? 18, rescind the article for line force main from Narrows to the WCPCF. This would be down from the pump station right at this side on Merchants Way.
Yes, the pump station at Merchants Way, Narrows Pump Station, all the way to the treatment plant, 1.9 miles. We've had that analyzed about 6 years ago. They gave us 7 years now. They gave us 5 years. Engineers recommended 5 years to replace it. We're at that point, a little beyond it. The bids came in higher than the 3 million. So we're going to rescind that, and we'll probably ask the moderator to put them together, because rescind one and then approve another one to increase the funds. Get rid of that money and put new money, because we want to make sure we're gonna have to rebid it. And we know the lowest bid was 4.1. And I can't say it's gonna come in at 4.1 because things escalate almost weekly, so we're asking a little extra to make sure we have the funds. So that's the next two articles. One's to rescind, and one's to borrow more money for this project.
So Article 19 is reflecting the increased cost on your,
Yes.
and you have, I'm sure, because I heard your explanation before the selectmen, there's a window before which you anticipate, and the peak, possible peak, which is 6 mil.
Correct.
So you're asking to be within that window.
Yes, up to the
so you
6
can go
mil, yes.
forward.
So we can go forward,
It's a not to exceed number.
yes.
Dominic?
You know, when you rescind, you're playing a little Russian roulette, because
I-
if 19 doesn't pass, you've given up your $3 million. Why wouldn't it be right, the Article 19, to add to that? You know, rather,
We had this.
rescinding is bad.
We were,
What I'm trying to say, is there a way to add to it in the warrant rather than rescind? Rescind, all of a sudden they pass rescind, you lose 3 million, and then 19, they don't like it, and then you lost.
this was
Not a
what,
good way to go. Rescinding anything is not the right way.
you can, this was recommended.
Derek, is looking into that right now.
Okay.
Because it was recommended, so we're looking at, so it may change at town meeting, and there was also an order. Maybe have the moderator do 19, and if 19 passes, rescind the other one. So there's an order factor
Because
too.
rescinding something first,
Yeah.
you
So
could lose.
It could be, the moderator could even make a choice of packaging several articles together that have really just a
You understand
housekeeping.
what I'm trying to say?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yes.
Particularly if the 3 million was for borrowing, so it wouldn't make sense to rescind.
I understand that,
yeah.
but it's already
Yeah.
been approved.
Exactly.
So the approval of borrowing 3 million is there, so they already have 3 million for
So
that
they wanna get
project.
what they want,
The
yeah.
project costs more, ask for more,
More.
and a little bit more rather than give up what you already have.
Yeah.
Never a good thing.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because it was, we
All right,
debated,
so let me-
and this was recommended, so we're going with
They say that's,
trustee
Yeah.
powers.
All right.
I had that discussion with Derek earlier.
Well,
Yeah.
it's just, I'm against it.
What Dominic suggests is a possibility, but I don't think town meeting would do that. But he's right, there's a
risk.
potential for that.
There's a risk.
It's always
Yeah.
the risk. He's right.
Oh.
I might not agree with him all the time, but I definitely agree with that.
Okay, then that's the last one regarding the water pollution control. Now, I hope you haven't used your speech that you'll have at our tour on the
No,
12th.
yeah, I'm looking forward to the tour, actually. Actually, Mark's gonna bring his son. That's gonna be exciting. He's an engineer. We'll bring a young child to get them excited about something that we're hurting in the industry, so we're trying to get everybody excited about working in the industry. Because it's a really great industry. It's not Arcani. Yeah, it's not Arcani, just so y'all know that. It's not. If you remember the honeymooners, Arcani represented wastewater workers. And so when people think that's what they think of wastewater workers, Arcani. That's not, they're not Arcani's anymore. It's really intricate. PFAS has become a major issue. We're going after PFAS, and our new permit requires us to test businesses for PFAS. Don't know how we're gonna do it. We gotta go find it, because we know we have it. And then we run a risk of admitting it, and then I have to worry about my sludge. If I report to the sludge haulers that I have it, then they may not take it. So it's kind of a Russian roulette we're playing right now with the mandates from the federal government. So we'll figure it out. So yeah, it's not, and we'll show you all this, and I want you to see all that you want to see, because it takes a total understanding to make, and this is the hard part, but when you see pieces, then you don't have the total ability to say, okay, how does this work and where the money goes? And I want you to see that, the functionality of what really happens, because it's quite unique. It's quite unique. And what we do is no more than what nature does. We just speed it up. Because if we leave things alone, if your septic system has failed and you don't touch it for a couple years, it'll regenerate. It's reality. But you don't have 2 years, because you'd have to go abandoned for 2 years. Because nature takes care of its own. It does a good job. And so we try to mimic nature and try to expedite it, because we don't have that kind of time. We have a short life, so we want to expedite things. So we'll show you how we expedite.
We're looking forward to you imparting your enthusiasm you have for the subject.
We'll have some fun. You gotta have fun, or it's not worth, I believe if you don't have fun, it's not worth living. You can't laugh at yourself, you can't laugh, you can't enjoy, then what are you doing? That's my philosophy in life. Anyways, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Any
or
questions?
that,
My
I have
comment.
before they depart? Such a
Okay.
Thank you.
question,
Yes, sir.
although I'm not on it. When I flush my toilet, how long will it take me to say hello again to what I just said goodbye to?
So, yeah, it depends what part, because we go through a series of pump stations, depends where you are. Because you flush it, it goes to a manhole, and then it migrates to a pump station. That pump station pumps it to another manhole, takes it to another pump station. So if you're at the extreme ends of the town, it may take you 5 or 6, 8 hours to get to us. If you're close, it'll be instantaneous. So depending where you are.
Some of us, flush a message down and we'll see if it
And
perks
see,
up.
we should, look,
It's like the
I'll
bottle in the sea.
keep
What?
the,
It's like throwing a bottle in the sea with a note inside.
I'll keep an eye out for it, because I'll look for the bottles that become. We used to collect things that we got at the headworks. We stopped doing it because it was kind of crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy, so we don't do that anymore.
Thank you very much.
You're most
again,
welcome.
Guy.
Thank you. I
Jim.
appreciate your time. Have a good day.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the petitioned articles. These will be brought before the floor no matter what. We have a requirement to do that, and a courtesy to these people who've taken the time to get the signatures and all, and they have a right to do so. I respect that. And so we'll have Article 28. Well, actually, no, excuse me. 28 is not one for the, oh, no, excuse me, it is a petition one. I apologize, it is a petition. And Sam?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Sam Corbett,
Welcome.
and I'm not here for any money. Hope to save money. This is a kind of a scary article that was passed last year. A lot of concerns. It's for a total elected board with no real professional addition to it, which is not a bad thing. I mean, I've been elected to many positions, but there was always a superintendent or a town board member that knew what they were doing, or a town administrator or something. This has none of that, and that's kind of scary.
But before we go, does anyone have articles, the Article 17 that he's trying to rescind? Does anyone have a copy? Do you have a copy, sir? Thank you very much. Yes, sir, it's okay, got it.
This is, just to jump ahead a moment, Sam, this is the redevelopment authority, which currently is an elected position, or has been passed by town meeting.
The one you're trying to rescind. I know what this, I have a copy of this article.
You do not have this?
You're trying to rescind Article 17 from
Fall town meeting.
2021. I need a copy of that.
I do not have that with me.
Thank you.
Here, you can read,
That one,
you
Bernie?
can speed read that.
Yeah, let me read that real quick. Thank you.
But it's essentially, town meeting had changed it to elected, and this article wishes to rescind that. It had not yet been accepted by the Attorney General, so it's up in limbo, and the rescinding it would effectively, if the town meeting chooses to do so, make that a moot point. Fine, Mr. Chairman, you have the floor.
The committee now does have professionals on it. Ken Buckland, I'm on the
I'm on the planning committee as well. I've worked with Ken now for about a year and a half. He does a great job. He's available to them, I think, for a stipend of 5,000, I think going up to 7,500 for a professional that knows his job. He knows it in and out. He's very creative. He's got a plan, working with the redevelopment authority for a plan for Main Street downtown, which is awesome if we can get it passed. They don't want the town administrator's help. I'm on the capital planning committee as well. I've worked with our CEO now for a year and a half. When he got here, our town was not in great shape. Right now, we have the second best bond rating, I think, that you can get. We have a great stabilization, we have great department heads, and he's doing a great job, in my opinion. The town is in great shape financially, the departments, I mean, even municipal maintenance, what they're doing with that few guys and girls is amazing. And they don't want his help. I think that's foolish. This one kind of hurts. They want to pay themselves. If I just had the money for the ink and the cartridges and the paper I use, I'd be happy. But they want to be, each one of them, volunteers want to be paid. I don't know of another board in town that pays themselves. Usually it costs you money to be here, just to get here. The scariest thing of all is the money. They want the ability to borrow money, to sell bonds, hire anybody they want. And in some places it says specifically, they don't want the town's oversight. That to me is scary. We have a guy here, John Foster, who does an awesome job. If they're gonna borrow money, that's who they should talk to. They want their own everything, which isn't in a vacuum bad, but we have so much to offer them that they don't want the help. I mean, we could offer them what they need to function properly. The current board we have, authority, has no staff. They don't spend a lot of money. I think in the 3 years, they've they've raised about $1 million, spent about $1 million. And I have that here if you'd like. That I do.
Thank you, sir.
Bottom line, it's scary. It's a lot of money. My name's on this, but there's a lot of people involved in trying to get this the right way. Yeah, with experience, it's not bad to redo anything. But we have so much available to them to save the money, to save the town money, and to help them with real professionals. And I don't know why they're doing that. So that's,
Sam, are you saying that you say there's people available? Are you talking the like planning board members?
yes, exactly.
Or employees of the town, or a combination?
The town planner, town administrator, John Foster, really anybody that they needed help with. If they needed help with, from David Manada, I'm sure he'd give it to them. But this is almost autonomous. They want to do their own thing, which, again, isn't bad, but we have so much available to save them so much money. It doesn't make some sense from a financial standpoint to do it this way. Any questions?
Yes, Dominic?
Okay. You know, I'm against rescinding anything. It's just.
Okay, good.
just how I am. Now, you're gonna bring this up and you're gonna rescind it. So what you're gonna say is that in 2021, the town voted to pass this. Now you're calling them idiots and you wanna get rid of it.
We made a mistake.
Tough to swallow. I'm not saying you're right or wrong, that's not my opinion here. It's rescinding things in the long run, if you've looked at it and you've looked at the results of it and the percentages of it, most of the time when things are rescinded, it's a mistake. I'm just talking about odds here.
Okay.
Whether you think this is, it's gonna be right or wrong, the town, obviously, it was presented to the town in a proper way to where it was right. And they thought it was right, and they voted for it to be right. Now you're gonna come in and say, geez, that wasn't right. That's a tough sell, pal.
No, I want to,
That's how it's gonna be looked at. And
probably right, but what we're doing is going back to what was working before.
You're basically going back to what you're actually doing
Exactly.
right now.
I'm not-
Right, so, right
This isn't in
now,
effect.
yeah, this never went into effect, so,
But you're not
in essence, nothing has changed.
But you're not giving it that chance there.
That's
It's in
true.
front of it, what
May I
was voted.
finish? May I
Yes,
finish?
yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize.
So, just to clarify, nothing has changed. The way that you are proposing that we go forward is the way it's been for some period of time, right? Maybe
Three years.
as long as the WRA has existed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think what you may be saying here is it wasn't broke and we don't need to fix it. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay.
I have a hard time stopping, I talk too much.
No, but I'm just trying to clarify. What we would be doing is sticking with basically the
What
status
we're
quo.
doing right now,
Yeah, okay.
which is working, which is the numbers on the sheet I passed around.
Right. And we don't really know if the AG is ever going to approve this or not.
Correct.
Okay.
And we're using professionals that we know, that we have, that we like, that are doing the job for us now. It's not like we don't know the people. I mean, you all know Derek. He's doing a good job, by all accounts. And that's what we'll be using. Derek, we'll be using Ken again, the same people we are now that are doing the job for us and doing a good job.
And so this is the job that they've done, this is their
Yes.
figures, okay.
Last 3
And
years.
you're showing this to show their activity then?
Yep.
What they've done, okay.
And there's ongoing projects, like the project to revitalize downtown, which is a big deal. Ken's been working on it for a while. It's gorgeous. We got presentation last Thursday from Ken, and a couple of members did show up. And it's a great plan. Ken's done a great job on it. And that would be available. No
How many plans have we had before this plan?
There was CETA before that, and it did work real well. It got reorganized to what it is today. In the last 3 years, they've done a good job.
I've been on this committee for, I don't know, too long, but this is the third or fourth plan for downtown. And you go down and talk to the people who are running stores downtown, and they say it's a joke.
Well, it's not my plan.
I understand that. They say that the plans that come, the idea of going through and planning, and what happens is a waste of money to spend $60,000-$70,000 to say, come in and plan.
I'm not a big study fan.
Well, I think what your overall objective is, Sam, is I interpret it. Currently, the board members are appointed.
Mhm.
What the article that they're referring to makes them elected, which leaves us very vulnerable to someone who is not prepared or has no experience whatsoever, who can get them elected to the redevelopment authority. Now, the redevelopment authority is unique in that they do have plans that are very, can be very imposing and have a very dramatic effect on the community itself, sections of it, or overall. As an appointed board, we're able to select certain people with skill sets that are advantageous to making those plans sensible and reasonable and practical.
Yep.
Whereas, as I said, an elected person, we have some 39 different boards here, all served by volunteers, all well-intentioned, all trying to do the best job possible. This one in particular, though, has a unique effect in that it, no matter what it does, it affects the very fabric of the community, because it changes something drastically. Mechanics Way, significant changes along that way that affects all those businesses. Tremont Nail, we've invested an awful lot of money in that to get where we are today. Spent an awful lot of years just spinning our wheels, and within the past 3 years, with some, I think, with some skilled people on that board, they got it to where it is today. And there's a number of other projects that they're involved in that I think require someone with some certain skill sets. And although the people who may want to run for office, and I'm certain I have highest respect for them to do something like that, and they're well-intentioned, they want to do a good job, but sometimes they just don't have the right skill set to it. And I don't fault them, but I think in this case, in my opinion, I would prefer to have an appointed board so that we can review the individuals and make sure that they have a proper skill set to accomplish what that board is charged with.
I agree to a point. The only thing is, if this went along and said, okay, we want elected members, but we also want to use the professionals that we have available, that I could probably live with, because I think as this board and many boards, people of that profession do apply. We've had architects apply to the planning board, because they know what's coming before them, and they're willing to volunteer their services. And if it was a board specific of, say, just to pick a number 7, and there were 3 elected, that wouldn't bother me, because there's gonna be, Ken's gonna be there, our chief executive officer is gonna be there, we're gonna have the availability to use Mr. Foster. I think that would have been, if they're gonna try and make an improvement to get elected, that would have been the way I would go. But the way it is working. This is not changing it, it's going back to the way it was, is the way it is right now. It's working, we have people that get along, that are doing the job, that are making a positive effect in the community, and they're not spending money. They don't get paid, they don't have staff. This wants each member of you all to be paid. You get the bonus, you get the
Thank you.
big bucks, the chair. It's the first time I've heard of it being done, and I don't know why that component is in there. To me, that kind of ruffles me. Having served on a lot of different committees and spent a lot of money.
Now, you suggest that they are talking about hiring someone, paying themselves, et cetera. What group are you referring to? Because that group doesn't exist, as far as I've known. Because Article 17 hasn't been implemented.
I'm not sure I understand.
You made reference to people wanting to pay themselves.
Right, in the articles in front of the AG, that's what it says. They want to pay themselves.
I didn't get that out of it.
I don't
No?
I just read it, I didn't get it out of it, not even
Okay,
close.
if that's not the case, I apologize.
Yeah. I didn't see it in there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
It is in there?
Comments?
No, it's not in there.
Questions? No?
No?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your
I
time.
actually have one question. How do you spell your last name?
Corbitt. I'm Irish, not French.
Got it. I thought that was right, but I wanted to be sure.
Okay. And the next one is also petition articles, Article 29 and 30.
Good night, sir.
Good night, have a good evening.
Jonathan?
Me?
Yes.
Didn't get the numbers yet for the article, so I apologize. How's everybody doing tonight?
Very good. And you want to act on recommendations of the Degas School Steering Committee.
Yes, so there are 2 articles. One is, I'm not asking for any money in one of them, it's just to, much like the fall time, I think it was fall or spring, we need to give our interim report. We weren't 100% sure the mechanics of how to do that. So one of the articles is just like, give me 15 minutes to talk, basically. If there are some other mechanics, we're working with the town moderator to determine if there's a better way with the chair as well, Chair Whiteside.
Well, that's the Article 30 that you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So if there's a better way to do it, we'll address that, but that's why there's 2, is just one is just give me a few minutes to talk, and the other one is the important one, which I consider, which is the favorable action on the report itself, so.
Well, if you want, we'll start discussing Article 30.
Sure.
Okay. And it refers to the town report, to hear the report of the steering committee. And I'm certain you are aware of, they're required to do so under the original article that created them, is to give this report at this
Okay.
particular town meeting.
As I said, I wasn't 100% sure of the mechanics, so I just wanted to have a little trump card to play just in case. If, the appropriate actions are in the article, we'll certainly do that. I don't want to take any extra time. If I've said my piece, then I will quietly sit down and put my hands in my lap.
I think
So-
under Article 6
Okay.
is the.
It was Article 5 for the spring, but I think that
I'm
was.
sorry, it could be 5.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've been working on the town meeting, and I'm looking at my old ones,
Okay.
and it typically showed up as Article 6.
Article
And so-
6.
It is Article 6.
It's Article 6.
Oh, it is Article 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
So
looking at it
likely,
right now.
as I
Oh,
said,
good, I'm sane for today.
keep the numbers straight. I'll confer with the rest of the board and see if the proper thing is just maybe take that back, since we're gonna be doing that anyway. But that was the easy one. That was, figured I'd like to take a few minutes talking about that one.
Indeed, because I emailed Diane and asked if committee had a report, that they may want to be printed in the finance committee report. I hadn't had a response from her.
We've been having some difficulties with quorum the last couple of meetings. We've had some absences, some medical issues that have been precluding some members attending. So the report is more or less finished. We just haven't, rubber stamped it. No, I don't really rubber stamp. We haven't put our gracious stamp of approval on it yet for distribution out, as a final quote-unquote report. The executive summary that I provided out, which I apologize for being 13 pages of an executive summary, but it's a big report. That sort of lays out the high points of the report that we've compiled, all the information that we have there, so.
Okay, what do you, on Article 29?
So Article 29 is just very similar to the one that we presented in the Springtown meeting, which was just that the town act favorably on the report of the Deacon's School Committee, which is, I'm the member of the clerk. And effectively, the conclusions of that report, which are in the end of the executive summary, were just that the major points that we were reviewing, architectural feasibility, financial implications, community impacts, positive benefits to the town. Based on those criteria, we feel that the Deacon's School is best used in the town as a community center. I'll pull out my copy here. I'd be happy to go through this in the interest of time. A lot of this stuff we had discussed, like the financial part really hasn't changed since the Springtime meeting I was with you guys before. So I can certainly go through the deltas, the things that have changed since we last met.
You're talking about now the recommendations in this article.
Right.
Article 29. And you're going to go over the report. Is your intent to do that as a presentation? Or what are the recommendations within your article?
So the recommendations sort of reference the recommendations in the final report, which is to say move forward with the community center, issue RFPs based on some notional schedules that we have, start lining up the dominoes, so to speak, to make this process begin. So that's what the article says, and then just like that sort of is backed up by the report that we've produced. So.
Okay, go forward.
Okay, sure. Looking through the executive summary, the first delta, the first difference we've had since the previous time we met was the architectural study that was completed by Joan Spain. I have a paper copy here if anybody'd like to see it. I'd also be happy to distribute to anybody who wants them. Norma has my email address, so I'll be happy to distribute to anybody who wants to see it. The big takeaways there were there's a couple small things that were identified. There's a leaky toilet valve, for example, in one of the bathrooms. There was some vandalism, unfortunately, to one of the windows in the back. But by and large, the school is architecturally feasible to house a community center in there. Some of the main points that we discussed were, I've come up, is like the heating, the temperature in there. So one of the things the architect did was actually distributed some remote temperature sensors over the course of the summer around the school, and found that back in August and July, during our hottest days of the year there in the 90s, the school only hit 84. And I know that's a lot, but it's still a pretty good temperature differential. So we actually went back, we talked with with Bethany Chandler, the principal, right? She was the principal? Yeah. And a couple of the members of the school board, and they said, they ran programs through the summertime there. They never really had too many complaints about it being super hot. But, obviously, that's something to consider in the long-term plans for at the end of the architecture report is sort of a short-term, medium-term, long-term plan for how we look at the things that need to be fixed in the building. And the long-term plan is mini splits or some sort of HVAC system down the road just to address that. As a bullet item, basically. There are some other things. Some of the spalling on the concrete steps is insufficient now, and could pose a trip hazard. So that's just get somebody with a little mortar and pestle and just fix that up, tidy it up a little bit. But by and large, most of the school is in very good shape. The asbestos considerations, there were no friable asbestos found. It's not friable, so as long as it's not disturbed, there's no concern about that stuff coming loose. Most of that remediation was done during the boiler replacements or the roof replacements in 2017 or 2018, whatever it was. So that was the findings of the firm, and I'm happy to provide that to anybody who wants to see that. Moving forward, any questions on the architectural part of it? Or?
Doesn't seem so.
Okay. There's a notional floor plan, which we did present at the previous town meeting. That hasn't changed. Again, notional just meaning that, that's sort of a best guess at how things would probably work. It's certainly up to interpretation, or as demand pulls one way or the other. That's obviously up to change. Financial planning, again, that hasn't changed since. There were some additional things here that we did add in the Springtown meeting. This budget plan only considered what and I may have mentioned this at the previous a meeting with you guys was that we only considered what we would classify as like realistic incomes, meaning rental agreements, stuff like that. There are some other things like grant applications. There was a solar canopy that we had some interest in. There's some other things that we had in there that are mentioned in the report, but aren't part of the budget calculation, just like some icing on the cake if, we rolled the dice once and we got a lucky break on a grant or something like that. So it's just some other stuff that was in there, but it's not part of the official quote-unquote budget because it just, you can't depend on that stuff, so.
I have a question on.
Sure.
And we may have already gone over this and my memory isn't what it should be perhaps, but you've got rental space of 27,000 square feet.
Mhm.
What about the other 41,000 square feet in the building?
So the bulk of the remaining space would actually be Council of Aging spaces. A lot of that is the gymnasium and the kitchen. Those are big spaces there. If the floor plan, I know I have a black and white printer. The floor plan. Yeah, so basically, if you look at the top and left parts of the map here, that sort of darkish shade, that is the COA space. The rental space is sort of concentrated down in this I think it's the E-wing down here, and then these lighter shades. And then there's a room for the maker space, the computer labs, the network labs, the artist space. So there's some other spaces in there, but the 27,000 basically comes from this wing that was added right here, and then these 7 classrooms that lighter shade in that little hallway, and that's where the 27,000 square feet comes from.
So there's no income from the 41,000 square feet?
Correct.
Part of that is dedicated to COA?
Correct.
I thought originally, maybe I just don't know the layout of the building that well, but I actually thought that the smaller wing over here was the COA
one here?
space originally proposed. Is that right?
No, originally, way back when we started this, we had some meetings with some organizations like South Shore Community Action Council, who runs the Head Start in town, who were interested in this sort of space. They liked this idea, and one of the ideas they had was, they have access restrictions because they have children during the day. So the thought was if that sort of portfolio be offered, that little hallway there is a very convenient fire break to say, nope, you put some secure doors in there, and that way it's a hard segregation from the rest of the building. So that's why, in later iterations of this map, we said that would be a really good spot for that sort of offering there.
And where you've got long-term tenant,
Mhm.
who is that?
So the long-term tenants, we've had a couple folks interested in that. Again, I go back to the challenge we had with, we didn't have any authority to issue RFPs, so we're sort of going by word-of-mouth interest here. But that would be tenants who are interested in either long-term, I want to sign a 5-year agreement or something like that, or if they needed, a full day, I'm running a business or something like that, something that I would need room for a period of time that's usually consistent. The short-term rentals are more revisions like, I want to run a class at night and I need some space to do it, and you could stack rentals, maybe one room is rented out 4 or 5 times during the day, so it balances out to an approximate $15 per square foot, or $6 per square foot per year as
But
an
if they're,
estimation.
okay, I'm sorry, I may be misunderstanding you. The $16 per square foot per year, is that for 27,000 square feet?
Mhm.
So you think that you can find tenants for 27,000
So
square feet year-round?
I'm confident that we could. I can't say that we do because, again, we didn't have the authority to really
Understand.
contractually obligate anything. But looking at the space of the building, if we set aside, it's a sliding scale, right? If you could do more room with a lower rent, you could do less room with a higher rent. It was this discussion that I had a bit with Derek, talking about what he's currently charging for something like Head Start, for example, down on Onside Ave there. And the idea is, what number, given the expenses are fairly fixed when it comes to, with the exception of all the current struggles in the energy markets, expenses being fairly fixed, what sort of sliding scale can we move the revenue or the income on to make this a revenue neutral project? And obviously you don't want to have 100% rental space where there's no community center, it's just an office building, or no rental space and then it's fully funded out of the town's pocket with no sort of offset. So that was the number that we came up with. $16 per square foot per year is about commensurate with most of the rental incomes or commercial real estate rates we found in town. It correlates with what Derek was a couple bucks more per square foot, but he said there's some subsidy chances there. Maybe one tenant pays a little more because they got a bigger room. There's wiggle room in there. But again, if it averages out to $16 per square foot per year over the 27,000 square feet, the building would be paid for.
And that's pretty much best case, right? Okay, so then how are the costs covered for all the rest of it?
So that would be an allocation of money through the town.
And do you have a calculation of what that would be?
So the worst case, if the building was empty day one, we had an estimate of about $400,000 a year to run the building. And that includes the cost of hiring somebody to be in there, keeping the lights on, keeping the heat and the water running. And that was and then, from that point, it's just a scale of how many people do you get in the building versus, what the costs are. So worst case was 400,000, best case is we turn a $35,000 net to the town on that. So.
But that doesn't take into account the costs of the 41,000 square feet?
No, it does.
It does?
Yeah, so all the
All of
utilities
these costs are
yeah,
for everything?
correct. Yeah, the utilities we took from the 2021 the 2021 school budget, added some extra percentages on there given the changes in energy prices lately, and that's what the numbers we came up with. Sat down with Derek, went through all these. He added the safety inspections. He thought, because there were people in the building, you got the fire and the sprinklers, so he added a couple things, trash removal, the cleaning services. I found a couple local businesses that gave me some, back of the napkin quotes on what it would cost to get somebody in there once or twice a week to vacuum and keep the areas clean. So that's where these numbers came from. That was the best guess we could come up with for this idea. And they're critically we put a number out there and you say, is this real or is this fake? And we went back through and looked through a couple other towns in the state of similar sizes and compositions, and most of them spend between $250,000 and $500,000 a year of those that do have a community center. So we're sort of in that ballpark of what you'd expect a community center to cost the town to operate.
And then if any of that 27,000 square feet was not rented out, that would be the cost to the town?
Correct.
Is under your calculations?
Yep.
And the $60 a square foot, would you do an escalator, or is that just all in?
So again, it's, Derek had brought up the possibility of some subsidies or things like that, some, but the idea was just keeping it simple. If we average out over the cost of all the square footage, what was a realistic number based on current market conditions, offers of existing rental space in the area, given the amenities of DECIS that makes it better or worse for certain industries and businesses. So that was the idea. And the $16 square foot,
I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back.
the $16 square foot seemed to, like I said, land right about in the middle of I saw some places in town that were 20, some were 10 for a warehouse down by a stone path there. So, it was, again, in the realm of where most properties are in town. So.
Questions, concerns? Gary?
Obviously, the Board of Selectmen told the town administrator to go ahead and fill up.
Mhm.
So where does that fit in here, or
So-
isn't it fit in
So
here
it's
right
not.
now?
I understand that that's the direction they put Derek in. As myself, I've been working on this idea for 2 years now, so I'm really intent on seeing it through. I still believe that DECIS is best served as a community center. I just want to put the idea out there and say, this is what I think, this is my idea, guys, what do you think? Put it to the town and see what happens. So this is separate, correct?
Separate, okay, it's as if,
This says, sorry, Derek, you're back at the town hall. You don't get no
All right.
offices, so. But again, I defer to the town on that, but this is I believe based on the work I've done the last 2 years that this is the way to go.
Dominic?
This was put in place long before Derek's idea.
The DECIS, we were working this since 2020, 2019, something like that. It's been a long time coming.
Thank you.
So you haven't done any kind of comparison as to cost benefit between that project and yours?
So the challenge, because I actually met with Derek, he invited me over to sort of walk through the town hall and paint me his idea of what he was considering. The challenge he has right now is he's still waiting on understanding what the refit cost on like this building would be to make it a police station. So it's tough. He took me to the police station, walked me through, and I agree that is a tough, the booking station is right next to the dispatcher, so if you got an unruly suspect, I guess, or screaming obscenities that somebody is dying on the phone, so it's not an ideal situation, so I'm certainly sympathetic to that. I said this much to Derek, I can't do an A to B comparison here because there's not enough information at this point. I don't think it's a bad idea off the cuff, but I still think that DECIS is the better idea.
The only apprehension I have is, hypothetically, if this were to go before town meeting, which would be in April, we're appropriating monies, and this is about $450,000.
Mhm.
That comes out of an existing budget that we're appropriating. Based on your best guess as to who might commit to a contract. And they may be already in commitment contracts and can't release on the first year, no matter how attractive it is. But we have to appropriate the monies for the individuals and the costs for operating that building under these circumstances, $450,000. That comes out of the overall cost, and we have to estimate or guesstimate that we will have a revenue that will pay for that, at least break even. If not, we are still on the hook for a director's salary.
Sure.
The custodial salaries, et cetera, and not to mention the money we invested in the building itself to make it accommodate your proposal. That is my apprehension.
It's completely legitimate. I agree. It's a concern, you know. I know that we talk a lot.
Because you
I'm
can't
sorry.
start until July 1.
Right.
The money's not gonna be expended until then. So you're already into the point where these groups are making their commitments for the for the future, for the next
And
year.
that's something we've run into, you know, that we had some groups who were very, South Shore, for example, was very interested in is doing this, but again, we had no authority to sort of say, sure, do it. You know, we had to, everything has to be neutral, you have to put the RFPs out there, create it on the rubric, you know, you can't just throw things to these organizations. I will say, based on the organization, we had 7 total letters of interest from organizations that I would consider likely to rent space. 2 of those were interested in the educational sections down here and a couple of the smaller ones up there. We had some folks like local artists want to do art classes once in a while in the art room. So there's some interest out there. I will say, you know, we're already appropriating the $250,000, $300,000 a year for the utilities of the building. We're doing that as right now, regardless of what's in that building right now. So all we're paying for really is just the cost of putting somebody in there. And further, you know, and this is, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. One of the specific things that you were concerned about last year was the idea of a plan. Who's going to do what? So I put some thought into that too as a committee. We put some thought into that as a committee. Is, you know, what a timeline? What's a 5-year plan look like for this? So a couple pages on in here. There's a draft plan of what, you know, how we would get from DECUS to a DECUS community center. And some of that is, you know, I agree. You know, we can't just, I can't go down there tomorrow and lock the door and say, we're open, come on in, everybody. There's got to be a process between those 2 points, and that's what we're trying to elaborate on in the plan part of it.
All right.
Bernie, but on that 400,000, I mean, there is a cost related to the COA over here, and they're gonna get some rental. So, worst case scenario is town has to put up a little first year, second year, you know what I mean? But it's not, you're not looking at, when you say $400,000.
What's
Well,
more,
That's the worst case, which would never happen.
Well, unless,
We have expense already for the COA over
Right,
here.
but-
So now you're gonna eliminate that.
unless there's a big repair or major expense.
Surprise.
Or it doesn't even have to be a surprise. I mean, I think you can count on a 50-year-old building needing some
Yeah, but
improvement
it's-
over
yeah.
time. So to me, the sort of, what I'm trying to sort through is, does it make more sense to try to sell this building? I don't know that
You've
we.
been talking to Tommy over there, he loves selling.
Yeah, I personally feel like we own too much property in this town, and a lot of it is sitting empty. And so, what would happen if we sold this building and we had money to turn one of the other smaller properties into a COA, for example? Because we have other smaller
Yeah,
properties.
we do, yeah.
Yeah, so that's sort of what,
2 of those
But
are
I-
being
But
sold
that,
right now.
yeah, on, for what you just said, you know, probably makes plenty of sense, but now you're pushing out the COA or doing for the elderly another 4 or 5 years. You
Well,
know,
not
this isn't
necessarily.
something, you can't do that overnight.
well, if
This
you
town
look
does
at-
not work that fast.
This isn't gonna happen overnight.
Yeah, this is not gonna happen overnight either,
No,
I
but-
understand that, but it's a lot closer than changing another building, just my opinion.
There's the another consideration is, have you ever been down there when it's really raining? You gotta wear
Feet
boots
up
up to your
Lake
knees to
Deacon's?
walk through the parking
Yeah.
lot.
I'm gonna say.
Yeah, Lake Deacon's, they have to
That-
bring out the fire truck to put
We-
pumps out there, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we asked we asked Bethany Chandler about this. She said the school never flooded. They said there were some puddles in the parking lot. And
they had a major problem with that several years ago, and they had to go down and redo the drainage.
Yeah, but the parking lot still
It's
floods
still
out.
puddles. It
Still
does-
floods
The
out.
future of the water table in this town is
yeah, I've
of
seen some of
concern.
the
Yeah.
the
parking
And
lot still
so,
floods out.
I mean, here we are going down a path where we do have a council on aging space now. And it's more central, than where you're going, and certainly less expensive. And if you swap it out, you're not gonna, what income is this gonna provide when you get away from it? So I think you're looking for something that's got more problems than solutions to it, or potentially in the future.
Well, let me move forward a little bit, if I could, because what I want to, part of this, I long-winded. Part of my whole thing with this is I understand in front of this committee, it's a financial question, but it's never been one for me. It's a moral question. It's an idea about doing what's right. And in that note, we ran a community survey a couple months ago, over June and July, as a committee. We had almost 400 responses. 354 people responded, more than we get at some town meetings, responded to this. Overwhelmingly was strongly supported. And when you look at, I didn't include it in this presentation, it'll be part of the final report. When you look at the breakdown of the people who strongly support this, it is our seniors. It is the people who are 64 years and older. They want a COA, they want Shine, they want veteran services, they want a place to go dance, they want to learn, take cooking classes. These things are borne out by the demand here in the town. It's not, I'm not trying to say that this is a great idea because I came up with it. This is a good idea because we got a lot of people who say it's a good idea in these responses here. You know, if you look at the next chart, the distribution of services and activities, this right here, and this is gonna be my counter to the sell the building argument. The second or third most popular item at Deacon's is the playgrounds and the soccer fields. And if we sell that building, necessarily those will be removed.
No, they
Not
won't.
necessarily, I mean, we could.
Those
we
are
could
two separate
simplify it.
lots.
Yeah,
The fields are actually protected property, open space. The building's not.
But, I mean, the public safety committee, almost every plan that they presented, we're removing those fields.
It was
So, I mean, the
removing
precedent,
the building and over. That's-
respectfully, I would be surprised if we sold that property and those fields remained. I'd be, well, if I was surprised, that's great, but I think that we're putting those things at risk by trying to sell that property. There's other concerns, there's asbestos in there, which means it's gotta be remediated. If you tear the building down, that's at least $1 million. Now we're putting perhaps some tax incremented financing in there, and we're gonna sort of offset some revenue gains over the next couple of years because we've financed this development now on the back end, and all of a sudden, we're not realizing the same tax revenue. We have to have a builder lined up and a company who wants to move in those spaces. We have to throw a building overlay on the district in that area. So, you know, selling the building, I don't think is the right answer either, because there's, number one, there's a lot of steps in there, and number two, you know, we saw what happened to the casino. A lot of people said no to that, and I think, you know, this survey is indicative of the same thing, that we're looking for some more in this town. And I understand that, you know, the town doesn't have a lot of resources to use, but I think this is a really good way to use the resources we have. Let's see. The next one is just distribution of social needs. So this was just some questions understanding some of the socioeconomic statuses of the town. Interestingly, I didn't expect this, but so one of the questions was, if you have children or elders in your house, do you have sufficient access to elder care or child care? It was very close. You can see the child care was 63 yes and 68 no. And the elder care was 98-77 yes and no, respectively. So there is some demand here. There's some opportunities here for expanded access to some of these services to help make lives easier for some of our town folk here. And then, you know, some of the common complaints we had, there's a whole section on the word clouds. We had an open-ended questions. We got some responses back. And some of the things we got back was there's difficulty getting, there's like long waits at some of these services right now. There's transportation problems getting there. So some of these things we felt could be remediated by having this community center up and running, expanding some of these offerings, either through South Shore Community Action Council, or if there's any other community organizations who'd be interested in moving in. And I realize I'm speeding up as I'm talking. I apologize in advance. So, you know, alignment with the town vision, that one, you know, the Wareham Town Master Plan, you know, I've only been here in the town since 2017, but as I understand now, the community center's been on the punch list now for a long time for the town. I think this is a great opportunity. I think building a new community center is a $15 or $20 million job. No way around it, unless it's gonna be, you know, a couple of rooms on the side of Cranberry Highway. So I think, you know, this is a smart use of the existing town resources, the existing town buildings and properties, and, you know, it's supported out by the survey results. Notional timeline here, this is, to Bernie's point from the spring, was just sort of an idea of like, how do we get from point A to point B? I won't bore you all with the nitty-gritty details here, but effectively, you know, the RFPs would be the first process to happen, to start getting those things out there, start getting the floor plan fleshed out. getting an inventory list created between the COA, DECIS, any other properties that would have some, furniture, desks, whatever that would be consolidated. And then using both the inventory list and the RFP responses, you could come up with a sort of tenant plan or a floor plan to say, all right, we have this many people, we're gonna allocate the map in such a way to make this work. And then start moving, start getting the building ready. So realistically, you'd have, I think I've got 100% operational capacity about 20 months into from go, wherever go happens to be, given all the things that have to happen before then. As far as who's going to do this stuff, you got a lot of committed volunteers here. So, there's certainly some breadth that you could call on. I know that there's some challenges with that. Work with Derek a little bit to figure out who would drive the moving trucks, but, that's the other part of it, so. And then the sort of example daily schedule, we looked at like what a day would look like in the community center. The building manager arrives at 8 a.m., opens things up. You have some of the tenants, the people who are renting space, coming in afterwards. The school program starts up, so they close those fire doors there so that we can get in. And then just sort of like, how things go. Just like, this is reminiscent to what I experienced in my hometown, and just sort of what I think would be we would think would be a good use of the town, or of this community center on any given sort of example date. For comparative analysis, we talked about the sales and redevelopment and why we sort of think that's not the best idea. Again, and I mentioned as much at the spring, before the springtime meeting, was, we were only given 15 grand, and I don't like treading over ground that's been tread upon already. So we tried to sort of, we engage with these committees. We talked to the Public Safety Committee. Charlie Kluber was on our committee. He was also on the Public Safety Committee, so he was a very good dialogue point. So we tried to consider their work, bring their work into the picture, understand what they're trying to do and what their goals were, and then sort of understand how that intersects with us. We talked about the salary development. For the public safety, we had, as I said, the playgrounds are the big one, and some of the plans that were presented by the developer, or not developers, but the planners, like the engineers, remove the playgrounds. And that was a big sticking point for a lot of folks. We had some anecdotal evidence. There was some concern about some of the seniors that we've talked with about having police going in and out of a combination police and senior center. There'd be some noise issues there. And then just, the overall cost of building something like that up versus utilizing what we've already got in the town. So those are sort of the retorts to the public safety argument. And then conclusions-wise, we'd like to see a community center. We'd like to see a yes vote on Article 29 come October 24th, 2022.
Well done.
Thank you.
Very good, Jonathan. Any questions, concerns? As it's written, Jonathan, is you're a subcommittee of the selectmen, I believe, and the wording of it suggests, and I could be just over-interpreting, that you're authorizing action by the town administrator, and we've run afoul of our wording in at least two previous articles, in that the articles themselves were instructing the actions of the administration, and the Attorney General had rejected them. And as I say, I'm just perhaps overly interpreting what I'm reading. I don't want you to have that problem.
No, I'm an engineer, not a lawyer, so some of this stuff is arcane and mysterious to me too. I will say, we look at some of the previous articles that have been passed and some of the bylaws that control the town administrator, and they do say, by town meeting vote or otherwise. So there's some interpretation there, I guess, that but I'm certainly aware that this is the same thing that happened in the springtime meeting. We had the same argument, and then we had this discussion, and the moderator at the time just made the decision to say we're going to consider this a referendum. So the results of that, I don't know. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I expect that. I accept that, and I think that we'll have to figure that out. But that's not my expertise.
Yes, Jerry.
You know what I think? I think you gotta consider the total cost of the town, including the cost of a new public safety complex. And I believe that Board of Selectmen Town Administrators plan is the most cost-effective there is. So, that's my,
Yeah, no, Like, as I said earlier, there's a financial argument and there's a moral argument, and I sort of
Well,
lean.
I'm coming.
As a
I'm not
finance
doing- I'm
committee.
saying-
The
I'm
moral
not
committee.
doing any- I'm not doing any morals here, I'm doing cost.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I just, as I said, I've been working this 2 years now. I'd be hard pressed not to see this through to the end and pull it over the finish line for good or ill. So.
Your passion and your hard work is very evident.
Very much so.
I do want to say, given that my town experience with the committee ends with the fall town meeting, and I'm not sure if I'll be seeking any other committeeships based on my experience thus far, I do appreciate the openness of this committee. It's very much not the common experience in the town, but I like the conversational aspect of it, and I feel like regardless of your opinion, you can at least get a fair shake here, and I do appreciate that. So.
I would suggest informally, of your own group, not necessarily presentation. As Jerry said, that Derek's proposal that the selectmen are pursuing,
Mhm.
the use of the building has some COA activities and all. I would suggest as a plan B to make sure that what you may be presented in that committee satisfies your
Sure.
your goals.
Sure.
And so, keep that in mind in the back of your head.
Mhm.
If you're
Yeah,
already
I-
going forward with this, you've committed to it, and that's what we're gonna see that evening. But just because in that day that the committee dissolves automatically doesn't mean as a group you can't go forward.
I'm gonna delete my phone number, change my email address, and move.
Out of town.
Can't be that bad.
Anything else? Oh, then Jonathan, thank you very much
Yes,
for
yes,
that
I appreciate the
presentation.
time. Thank you, guys.
Okay, the next time is the voting on articles that we've considered for the last meeting. And let's see,
Would be 21 to 27.
yes.
Yeah, I think we had a short one last week.
Okay, and Article 21, which is the bylaw change. And it's actually the change of a single word. And that is in section 1381, subsection 3, subsection 2. In the line, it goes, laid out by plan or deed prior to November 1951, or conform to zoning requirements. They're deleting the word setback.
I move to recommend.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
7-0.
7-0.
Yes.
Article 22, which is amend the zoning bylaw, Article 12, new MS4 regulations. And this is EPA required.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded.
A question,
Yes.
EPA required, so it's mandatory? Is that what you're trying to say?
Just about that, yes.
Oh, last time,
Yeah, it was a mandatory change.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
Did anyone watch the planning committee last night when when these articles went before?
I did, I watched some of it.
Monday night, yeah. Because I tuned in at the end and it seemed to be saying that they found something wrong with all of the articles.
I haven't,
I think there may have been discussion on 24 on signs.
Okay,
I heard a rumor,
all right.
but I don't know about the rest of them.
because I think it was a 15-word sentence, and they spent at least 20 minutes on it.
All right, well, I didn't see it, so.
Yes, Alan?
I think there may be some changes.
If you want
Proposed.
clarification, I think it was Mr. Schultz said there's areas all through the zoning articles that really need to be cleaned up somewhat because there's some ambiguous information there. It had nothing to do with the articles coming forward right now. But in general, he was saying that there's areas all over that there's questions about,
Yeah.
that they need to work on.
The selectmen have unanimously approved it.
That was the reason for that.
I believe I have a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote 700. Article 23, for the marijuana social consumption establishments, the state has not made up their mind as what they're actually going to do. So this allows us to extend the moratorium that currently, well, that has been a year hiatus, so to speak, but extends the moratorium for 1 year.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? You'll have to wait to start your new business, Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Number 24, Article 24, excuse me, which is the signs. There will probably be an amendment to this based on what the discussion I heard as to the wording of it. What is a window? Is it a frosted window? Is it a window on the door? How about the window in the back?
What about blinds?
And the whole,
Blind.
and the whole issue of signs we talked about last time, the sign, yeah.
It's, I don't know.
But effectively, it says 25% of the total window. Now, it doesn't, what their discussion did or involved was not necessarily change of the intent, but just to change what a window is.
It's a waste of time, though, this is the 20.
Yes, Alan?
What the end result was, it's 25%.
25% of the visible space.
24 hours. Give me a break. When they finally got down back and forth on all different things, basically they went back to the original, and all it does is say 25% of a window, or a door sign, each individual, not in groups. So it goes back to the original. Again, this particular zoning bylaw was in effect until the last revision, and for some reason, it was actually left off. It wasn't done on purpose, it was supposed to be there. And
No.
again, the only reason for this is strictly for public safety. If they come in and there's a robbery, there's a fire, et cetera, not only in Massachusetts, everywhere, you have to be able to look inside the particular building or whatever to see whether it's safe to enter or not. And if it isn't, the police and fire will not go in. That's all this is. And they started to talk about what happened. You have a tinted, window sign. It got out of hand because you could put shelving in front of a window and block it, but it's not a sign. And it's really, I hate to say it, it's more geared to the liquor stores who probably are the biggest offender of this particular issue. If you go and look at a liquor store almost anywhere in Wareham, you can't see it because they completely wipe out all the window stuff with signs.
Yeah.
And who is more likely to get robbed? A liquor store.
Dominic?
Go ahead, Dominic.
The only thing that I saw.
Excuse me, I'm in charge here.
Hey, look,
The only thing that
I'm trying to make it easy.
the only thing that I read, Bernie, through you, is they didn't mention whether or not this was feasible during operating hours or non-operating hours.
Makes no difference, Dominic.
But it doesn't mention
It
that.
doesn't have to.
Okay.
It's a sign. Sign doesn't, sign is,
Okay.
the sign doesn't move between different hours. The sign's there permanent.
Some people put down grates when they're closed. There's a lot of things that it needs to be, whether it's open or it's closed.
But if it's a grate, then it no longer is a sign or anything because it's completely gone. The window's
But
gone.
you can't see in the property.
But the window's gone.
Okay. Whatever. It's just,
There's no longer a window, Dominic.
okay. Thank
Unless you put a grate that is
Dominic,
a lattice.
you don't have any windows in your shop.
When the grate's up, I do.
He does?
That's what,
Yeah,
that's
front
what I'm
door.
saying, whether or not that law applied when you're open or closed. I didn't see any of that language
It
in
only
there.
matters if it's an actual window. If you put a grate down, you're changing the face of the building.
Okay,
And it says front or back also.
okay,
For Dominic, it's personal.
that's right, it's always personal. Hi, Tom.
I move to recommend.
I have a motion. Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote 7-0-0.
Thank you.
Next, Article 25, amend the zoning bylaw, Article 6 corrections. And it's correct a series of just Scribner errors. It doesn't necessarily change the intent or the interpretation of the overall zoning bylaw.
Make a motion to accept.
And I think in our report, I'll try to get some hint of what some corrections are. I mean, you just blatant say that there's errors, okay, and you'd like to know what,
If it doesn't change the integrity, it's not that big of a deal.
indeed, I agree.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Who moved? Dominic, thank you, Don. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Article 26, the boiler project. I do not have any information as to the cost of borrowing for either one of these articles. I've had a note into Derek and John Foster, and my conversation with Derek is he will be before us next Wednesday, and we'll go into detail as to how we're gonna finance those two articles. Because obviously together they're about 2 mil, but the rest of the middle school roof, as he indicated, is a potential around 7 mil, and that's not reimbursable.
Then why wouldn't it be, don't they,
The rest of the roof isn't old enough.
so MSBA,
Yes.
they won't,
No, they won't reimburse on that one.
on the boiler they will though, right?
Yes.
So on the boiler they will, and the roof they won't.
Correct.
Part of,
Okay.
Part of the roof,
part of it, right.
a small part they will.
And because the roof is not old enough, is that what you're trying to tell me?
Correct.
That's what Matt told us, yeah.
It's a patchwork, and different
No,
parts
I-
were put on at different times.
No, I believe you, they usually, pretty good with it.
And they reference that there are 22 sections of roof. And think, wait a minute, you got this big building over there, what's these sections? There are the roofs at different heights, like the one section, the auditorium, or excuse me, the gymnasium roof.
Higher, yeah.
And then on either side of it, there's the locker rooms, et cetera, and they have lower roofs, and each one of them is counted as a section.
So we're gonna hold off till we get financial, hold off on voting till we get financial?
I would suggest we do so, just to have a more complete awareness, because if you put this entire package, the borrowing from the sewer is gonna be paid for by their retained earnings or by their fees. And they said they got about 6 million retained earnings, but it's gonna be paid for by them, so it's not gonna impact our budget at all. Whereas this will impact our budget. And there are gonna be other borrowings that come up, I believe, for the next fiscal year. He's already said he's gonna come up for 7 million for the rest of the roofs in April. And that's gonna be a borrowing that the MSBA does not reimburse. I presume there's gonna be also on several other borrowings, depending on what they wanna do
Okay.
to impact
So then-
our payment. We
So
can
then-
borrow some out of our operating capital, but you get to a certain level and you have to go out to bonding,
Right, that's all.
and that'll
So
take
then,
it.
so then we're, then I'll make a motion for 26 and 27, that we put them on hold till we get financial,
I think I would do that anyway, in my
Okay.
discretion.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna ask for that
We
because
don't
of the
need it.
condition of
We
the
don't
two-
need it, we don't need it, okay.
No, no, it's
All right,
not
good.
there, we vote now. And those are the only other two. Everything else we had this evening. And
Gonna vote
the
on
ones we
20.
haven't seen, 1 through 6 and 20.
We're gonna vote on 28, 29, 30, or no?
Next
No.
week.
Next week, okay,
We typically, traditionally have done that.
no problem.
Do you wanna take volunteers to write recommendations?
And yes, as we usually do, and I also want to outline the volunteers who are writing the explanation or recommendation for the Finance Committee for our booklet. I'll also ask the individuals to do to read the motion on the floor.
If you got a list of who's writing up on what? Because
Yes,
I committed to something less.
yes,
Committed to
Article
s-
7, 8, 9,
Intent.
and 10. And Julie committed to 11, 12, 13, and 14.
Is there any?
And you wanted me to do a CPC one.
And that was,
I wrote down 11, but it doesn't look like it's right.
11 was a while ago.
Julie got 11.
yeah. No, well, no, you've got,
Waterway
he's got,
rules.
So
he's got,
anything that we voted on tonight has.
The
been-
harbor master.
yeah,
Oh,
you've
yeah,
got
how-
7,
okay.
8, or CPA,
CPA,
Nine
7, 8,
CPA.
9, and 10.
10. Yeah,
Harbor Masters, 11 through 14.
So 7, 8,
9 and 10.
9, and 10.
They're all CPA.
Your wife will love doing that, won't you?
When do we see the minutes from the last meeting? I mean, this is,
We only voted
for the last couple of years, we've been
on these, yes, those 5.
way behind. Usually we did the minutes
We're
at
several
the,
weeks behind. I just got the discs this evening,
So next week.
and so next week we'll see them. I hope. I'll talk to Kelly. Because I've been trying to contact her, and I haven't heard from her. She may be tied up because they just had a wedding 2 weeks ago of their daughter, and they have a house down in Bonita Springs. And my last conversation with her, they had no idea because the neighbors were unreachable because of the lack of cell service or phone around the whole area. And they do have a boat in the marina, and they didn't at the time know what happened
they
with
had a
that.
boat in the marina.
Had its past tense, you're right.
It may be on top of the
And a pile of toys at
Can always pull the meeting up on,
Pardon me?
says you can always pull the meeting up online. Through the WCTV.
With the CPC? Yeah.
You're gonna be right on top of that, aren't you, Jonathan? There's
They're al-
usually a
they're always-
delay,
they're
or
always
wait
good
at
about
least a
having that
day
set.
before they get it up online. Because what happens like tonight, they'll work on it tomorrow.
And Bernie, we're running up against deadline next week. We have to,
The 12th, I would like to see everything in.
I'll volunteer to take the sewer.
I was gonna,
good for you.
I was actually gonna put in on the sewer ones.
Oh,
That-
really?
Yeah, those are
I thought we weren't giving
those
them
are the
on,
ones
we
I did
didn't-
for
I
the
thought-
last time.
I thought
Okay.
we weren't giving
Why don't
on
you
what
do
we
that?
voted
Yeah.
on.
Beg your pardon?
We did the sewer.
We didn't vote on the.
We didn't
sewer.
vote on the sewer yet.
Oh.
No, we
No,
didn't.
we
No,
did,
we didn't,
that's
that's
next
right.
week,
No,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
The only ones,
That's why I
the
hadn't
only
said
ones
anything
we
yet.
voted on were the 5, 21
I'm
through
ahead of myself.
25.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I'll do 23.
I was gonna say, so we still have 21 to 25?
Just 20.
Yes.
Dominic, you said you wanted to do 23?
23, sure. When we do anything else, I'll do
Okay,
it.
then I can do the other zoning.
How about 24 and 25?
The signs,
Yep.
Want me to do those, Ron?
Yes, please, if you,
All right, I'll do 23, 24, and 25.
yes.
do you want me to do 21 and 22?
25 is gonna be,
21 through 22, okay. And,
Nothing off.
yeah, we'll hold off on the schools. I might do the schools only because I might have more information than you would if I'm talk to Derek and whatever. But typically, I'd like to get it in as early as possible so that I can send it out to everyone and they'll see it for, at least for a couple days. I've already checked with Staples. 250 copies will cost us $2,700. And that's with 2 color pages. color pages would be the layout for the middle school roof and the cover.
Which is that's a great picture, by the way.
You sent it to us, looked good.
This the fire engine? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the truck,
Very
the
good,
young kid. I thought,
perfect.
how best, young kid and that old truck.
Big smile on his face.
Yes. I've already called the paper, but they didn't answer me back as to permission to use it. I left them a voicemail though.
Better-
And
How about the parents of the kid?
I gotta find out, because it could be because it's in the public domain now, that they've given their, by permitting it to be printed here, they've also given their private
Given the
domain.
rights to the
Otherwise it's
newspaper, yeah.
It goes out,
It's
He's a
out in
child.
public anyhow, so
Yeah.
it's,
Give permission.
That's true.
The,
Right. Yeah,
on
it's
the
out in
sewer,
public.
I was sitting here saying that the town really needs an education on the whole sewer issue, I think, rather than, I mean, there's gotta be a presentation of what the plant was started and where it is and what, all the issues with it.
And what the risks
Because
are.
we're asking, huh?
Yeah, what the
They-
risks are.
I mean, we're asking to open your mouth and swallow 18 million bucks. I mean, that's crazy.
And
Oh,
that's just the
indeed.
beginning.
Yeah.
if you go down, I think there's 49 pump stations, umpteen miles of pipe, and the plant, et cetera.
But
et cetera.
they ought to go out and get a professional group to help them put together a presentation that gives the town an overview of what the issue, what this plant is, what it involves, and what the issues are.
And what happens if we don't do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
might be a good
Alan,
recommendation,
did you wanna say
Yeah.
something? You have to use the mic.
might be a good recommendation for,
You know, to help everyone understand, here we have a redevelopment plan for the downtown, but we have a system that despite best efforts, can barely do the current capacity, not to mention commit it and key it up, so I agree, it's help people understand, otherwise we're dead in the water on this.
Yes, Alan?
Two things. First of all, I used to do catalogs, et cetera, for a couple companies. You cannot use a picture unless you get a sign-off from the photographer. The real problem is, does that photographer have a sign-off from the child's parents? I would be very leery about putting something on because people are extremely, I'll say, get upset when they see a picture of their kid in anything at all.
And as I said, I've called America, the Weekly, and I've gotta keep calling them, because
I will guarantee you they don't have a sign-off from the parents on that picture.
Might wanna have a plan B on that.
Yeah, there's a photo by, but
If you want,
talk to them.
if you want, block
I've
the
always
face
called
out.
them before and asked permission.
I'm just saying, just block the face out. It's, the reason being is, one of the companies I did something for didn't listen, ended up with basically a lawsuit for everything they sold out of that catalog. The particular person was out of California, was suing them for all income derived from that catalog. And that was a huge, and they lost.
And just to let you know, I kind of tweak Onset's nose, and title of my explanation of the fair and all would be, Wareham's Onset is back.
You're killing me.
That side,
Yeah. The other piece is, we're gonna be discussing on Thursday, the water pollution control facility coming and talking to us about whether or not they've reached out to EPA and what the long-term is. We cannot shut that plant down for a day, just so you understand. So this is not like, oh, well, whatever. This is something that hindsight, is easy, but we should have fixed this 8, 9 years, 10 years ago. Looking at this now, it's the old, again, I always mention the Fram commercial, pay me now or pay me later. Well, this is a huge pay me later right now. Because if anyone here, say you want to add a bedroom to your house, you can't do it. Because you have to add a bathroom, you can't get sewer hookup if you're already in sewer. Basically, there's a moratorium. That moratorium means there's no economic development moving forward in Wareham that's new.
That's costly to us.
And it's more than costly. The problem is that realistically, you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 8 years to fix it.
And that's only just to get it up to where we
And,
are now, right?
and what we've heard, this is the first time,
Some of the things are gonna get,
yeah, but this is the first time I've heard from someone in the facility saying the facility is inadequate, et cetera, it's not working. All I've heard for years, and I mean for years, is Wareham has one of the best water pollution control facilities in the state. Even the Buzzards Bay Coalition tells us that all the time. Now we're hearing it's barely working.
It may not be working in the morning. That's a-
Don't flush too many times.
Well, after I get done eating tonight, it probably won't be.
And then I guess my concern is, there is so much, besides the queue, committed, for instance, Makepeace, 500, like. where'd
Those,
that come
that
from?
500,000 was done when they originally did the BDOT and stuff.
Yeah.
And Makepeace gave money for the Springborn, project there. But as far as I'm concerned, that 500,000 gallons to Makepeace is gone now because they've committed not to doing any development.
Yeah.
So it's not written down legally, it's just something that was, you do this, we do that. But I wouldn't, but the problem is we're virtually at capacity, not for total, but how much we can put in the river in a day.
Yeah.
And I know, I went with a guy, it's gotta be 7 years ago now, I think, to EPA in Middleborough where they have their office. And we talked about how can we get an increase or how can we change the comprehensive wastewater management plan? Because we haven't finished that plan. That plan shows that we're supposed to do the Agawam Beach area as part of the plan, and we've never done it. So in order to change that plan, we have to come up with something that offsets the other. And when we met with them, they said if we were to agree to basically sewer I think on Route 28, the mobile home parks, they would consider that as being an alternative. But we haven't done anything at all in all these years with anything.
Are any of the parks sewered?
The only one that's sewered, I believe partially right now, would be Great Hills. Because what happened in Great Hills was there's the industrial park to the right of it. There's a manhole cover with a sewer there. The park owners, because he was in the particular type of business, he went in and tunneled into that and started charging certain number of the mobile homeowners for sewer. And unfortunately, we caught him. But I would imagine that particular park probably will, eventually be all sewer. But the one next to, the people that just bought that park, the one next door, Royal Crest, they're looking to see if they can get sewer somehow in there.
I just assumed that they
No,
were on
never use the
sewer.
word assume, you know that better than me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the problem is there's so much institutional history going on in this town that as new people come in and the old people go away, there's no paperwork to tell you what's going on. And you can't find it.
It's very confusing.
It is. But this is, just so you know, this is financially a real serious problem.
Yeah, I
The
think we
rest
know
is
that.
on the
You're looking at probably gonna be low because everything is costing so much now. We're looking at $60 to $65 million to build another facility, in-ground discharge, with everything that goes on. I've actually reached out to Congressman Keating originally for the $142 million for the output out of the canal with 4 communities. I thought that would be an easy one to get. But with the coalition not moving forward like they were supposed to, we have to look at something for ourselves.
It's a shame.
And it really the public needs to understand, what we're trying to do, where we're at. You
That
can't,
was my point, is you got a town meeting, you're gonna have to,
I mean, you can't hide
Then
this,
again-
you can't hide
then
this
again,
stuff.
Tom, like I said before, there's only half the people footing the bill,
Well, there are a lot of communities,
okay?
an example, Harvard, Mass., which is a fairly upscale community, what they did was, they decided to sewer the town. They made the decision. Everybody in town pays for it.
Gloucester did the same thing.
Because what it is it's a benefit to everybody. And
That's
the
what I've been
long-term
saying.
piece is,
That's
it
what
makes
I've
it
been
more
saying.
palatable if everybody pays for it.
Yes.
And it makes it easier financially, because I don't believe we'll ever get
Guys
we'll get we might get a debt exclusion for stuff, but that's as far as it goes. I don't see this town, at least in the next 5 to 10 years, passing an override.
Right, I understand, but the guy said it tonight, he said, our biggest asset's the waterways. It brings people here, financial for the town. But then again, only 53% of the people are paying, footing the bill. And
Yeah.
I've been bitching about that for 2-3 years, nobody listens.
I mean, you have these projects that they're looking at right now for the WRA, like downtown, there's other areas. I've got the railroad crossing, so we can do that boardwalk as another piece to maybe make an incentive for the stores on Main Street facing the riverside to actually convert their buildings to the back for the entrances. you can't do any of that right now,
Right,
because you don't have sewer capacity available.
right.
But I think Tom's point is really important. It's kind of what Julie and I had talked about this too. You can't just tell people this is how it's gonna have to be. You have to sell it. You have to explain to them
What
why.
Well, I mean, I'm not selling it, I'm just telling them, here's the situation.
Well, yeah,
you know,
but
How we
that
got
does,
and how
I
we
think
are
it
there,
How
does,
we got there.
if you
and
have,
what the next 10 years looks like.
right, but if you have that information, I think it's easier to say, well,
Well, yeah.
we need to do this, you know?
Yeah.
Because we are at risk of people voting something down that absolutely has to be done.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point, the pollution, I mean,
Yeah.
think about what he's saying, it's going to the Agawam River.
Right.
We know Little Harbor, how often this summer closed,
Yeah.
the two may be
2
connected.
days.
Yeah.
You think?
I think the other thing is, when going back on the capital committee and stuff, that was dissolved because the town accountant said it was a waste of time because we didn't ever buy anything. I think myself and one of the guys, David, who's on the actual FinCom at that time, we got together and we reinstituted the capital planning committee, 2008 maybe, if I remember right. And the first full year in there, I went ahead and did everything, including the dam removal and police station I had in there. I also had school stuff. And I came to town meeting, I think Mr. Andrews was town administrator right then and there. And my first comment was, a big 95 million something dollars is how much we're looking at over the next 5 years. And they were not happy with me by putting that out there, but that was really where it was at.
You gotta
And
tell the truth.
right now, I had my wife give me the latest that they have. They're at $104 million as of today
Sure.
for 5 years. The problem is that most of the departments, because they don't feel they're gonna get anything, are only giving capital planning 1 or 2 years worth of stuff they need. There's nothing 3, 4, or 5 years.
You can't
So,
plan that way.
so that 104 to $105 million is way understated.
Yeah.
And I don't have any easy answers, because I don't see the things getting better in the next 2 or 3 years because of the amount of money this government has printed. It's gonna come back and bite us.
Indeed.
So that's it. So I'm pushing on my end what I can do from the federal end, but it's hard.
And it's difficult because the people you're talking to could sit there and shake their head yes and agree with you, but they don't have enough money in their pocketbook to.
No, the only ones right now is the government with the different infrastructure programs, the ARPA funds, et cetera, have pushed for water, sewer, broadband. No, those are the 3 things. And the state transportation has decided, I don't know why, they want to do the 2 bridges over the Cape and the swing bridge in Fairhaven, New Bedford. And that was directly from Secretary Tesla, who we had at the SERPED annual meeting. He sat at the table with me and he asked me, what do you guys want? I told him what I wanted. He told me what he's going to do. They didn't line up at all. But at least I told him what I needed.
Question 1 of the things gonna help transportation if they pass it.
Hmm?
Question 1 this November is gonna help transportation if they pass it.
You think?
That's what
In
they
theory.
say.
I don't think
I
so.
don't believe it, but.
Me
that's
neither,
what
sorry.
they say.
I'm on committee for transportation at the MMA's. It's not, sorry, it's not happening.
Motion to adjourn?
Seems to be in order.
Well, I mean, this is a pretty good discussion you got going here.
Well, I think,
Because we not only got sewage treatment, we've got, I'm sure that we need to invest a lot more in our information services department. and
yeah, Matt
get up
does,
to
for
speed and
a
look
two- for a
out
two-man
ahead.
organization in this town, you have 2 people. They do an
It's
amazing
crazy.
job.
I mean, we're off the air, I hope. No, we're not off. the
Yeah.
air, but-
There's one.
There's 2.
But
His assistant's gone.
Oh, he left?
Yeah,
Well,
he's
you-
been gone for a while. It's just Matt.
You drive him out again?
I didn't do it.
I didn't even know he was gone. I thought he was fine. But the bottom line is, what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years, we've balanced the budget by basically keeping the amount of people working this town at a minimum, or running on skeleton staffs everywhere. It's really that simple. You know, you lose one person, things come to a halt.
we got our head in the sand.
Middleborough, just to give you an example, they're up for a new town manager or town administrator. I have a friend that I thought she was gonna apply for the job. She decided not to because 8 department heads retired in the last few months.
Oh.
Try and see if that happened in the town of Wareham, what would happen.
And Guy's 2 years beyond retirement,
Guy was supposed to retire in Christmas.
yeah.
We don't have an assistant sitting there learning everything.
The institutional knowledge, and we'll go down the tube.
It's hard, you know, but we're all volunteers here, we get paid the same, we get zero, we get 100% raise every year. But it's hard, because after a while, you get kind of burned out and you get discouraged. And we lose good people all the time because of it.
Well, you do, because you, if you go around to the volunteers of all the committees, a lot of them have already served on other committees. And they look for possibly something a little easier. And the issues just keep getting bigger no matter where you go.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait a minute, I explained to you earlier who's in charge here.
It's not discussable, remember
I
Robert's
already
rules.
said motion to adjourn.
I second the motion
And
to
it's been
adjourn.
seconded.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I'm just practicing, I have to run the selectmen's meeting on Thursday.